So let's find out what the next thing the mainstream media is going to be lying about.
Before white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and white nationalists marched in Charlottesville, Virginia in August, they were organizing behind a computer screen. And a lot of that organizing happened through a messaging service called Discord, which was originally created to connect video game players to one another. This is just the latest in the long-running shared history between the gaming community and the alt-right.
Oh my fucking god. Alright, let's do this thing. This is how gamers are facilitating the rise of the alt-right. Think NBC News.
Before white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and white nationalists marched in Charlottesville, Virginia in August, they were organizing behind a computer screen.
What do the alleged Nazis allegedly in alleged Charlottesville, allegedly carrying alleged tiki torches, what did they have to do with gamers?
And a lot of that organizing happened through a messaging service called Discord, which was originally created to connect video game players to one another. This is just the latest in the long-running shared history between the gaming community and the alt-right.
So they got this little line going from the game controller to Discord to this hooded white nationalist KKK symbol. Seriously? You could put anything in there. Anything. You could put the MSNBC logo. In fact, I think I'm going to do that. Who does this, like, who just watches this stuff and say, oh yes, those lines, they just prove the case, don't they? Just, you know, gamers are on the internet, and neo-Nazis are on the internet. Therefore, the internet is evil. Like, Discord really, there must be some sort of recourse Discord has to say, you know what? What the fuck do you think you're doing? You are libeling our organization and our product. The fact that we provide a service for communities, and 2 different communities used it, and one of those communities was a little sketchy in their morals, doesn't mean that we are in fact encouraging either community, or that gamers are somehow associated with the Ku Klux Klan. What the fuck?
Gaming culture has always been racist, it's always been sexist, but the internet has sort of allowed us to just sort of see what has always been there.
Emma Vossen is a PhD candidate studying how sexism seated in gaming is replicated in the real world.
It's just a bald-faced assertion right there. Just, yep. They just are. Because racists and sexists can get on multiple gamer games and spout racism and sexism. That makes all gamers racists and sexists. And furthermore, we're not going to include certain forms of racism and sexism when we talk about people's racism and sexism, because, you know, it's okay to hate white people, or apparently, depending on your ideology, Jewish people, and it's okay to hate men. But those other groups, the ones that it's socially unacceptable to scapegoat, that's who matter. Not everybody. Like, this isn't an inclusive thing. Like, don't insult anybody based on biological factors. No. We have to retain the ability to choose the correct scapegoat, because God knows, when society has chosen the correct scapegoat, it's always vindicated by history. Always.
Emma Vossen is a PhD candidate studying how sexism seated in gaming is replicated in the real world. Her study is based on Gamergate, a movement that began with intimidating and harassing female video game journalists under the guise of fairness in video game journalism.
These are all from an account that very suspiciously was created, tweeted them, and captured by Anita Sarkeesian within a span of, I think, half an hour. and the account was tiny. And then MSNBC has put the Gamergate hashtag and egg on these tweets to make the association that much. It got rid of the actual name of the account to put Gamergate on it. And this is all from one person. That's not deceptive, is it? It's not deceptive at all. Actually, it is deceptive. For those of you who don't understand sarcasm, I was being sarcastic. It is deceptive. It's deeply deceptive.
The harassment quickly gained traction. It helped catalyze the alt-right movement, which secured power and prominence during the 2016 election cycle.
When you were studying Gamergate and you were really looking at the techniques that they use, it's impossible not to see the same techniques being used by Trump supporters.
Gamers use the internet? Gamergate uses the internet? Trump supporters use the internet? It's so clear!
According to Vossen, the gamers and the alt-right share common ground.
As people who are marginalized are fighting for equality, those who've traditionally had privilege, especially white men.
Unproven assertion. Unproven assertion. Why don't you look at the suicide statistics and the statistics in death and war, and who didn't have a choice whether or not they were conscripted, and tell me again that men had privilege overall. I mean, that's not awful. And they just hand wave that. They hand wave it. It's really interesting that they hand wave it because our legal counsel in our lawsuit, Harry Capito, described a situation where a woman, and he got millions of dollars in compensation for her. In the 1920s, she was in a relationship with an Asian man. And the authorities decided to intervene on her behalf, end the relationship, and put her in a group home. Now, she had a group home with, heating, presumably whatever passed for plumbing at the time, lighting, a comfortable place to live. And she wasn't, in threat of her life in this group home. But of course, it was a complete loss of autonomy. The state was essentially going into her life and deciding where she would live, where she would have to move to, who she could associate with, and her general environment. But I was listening to this and I was thinking, yeah, that is a horrible encroachment on someone's personal autonomy. But in that context, with those specifications, look at conscription. Conscription. Is the government going into a young man's house, telling him where he is supposed to be, telling him what he can eat, who he's supposed to associate with, where he's supposed to go, and not just that, doing it in the context where they're putting him in a situation where he's very likely to die. They're not putting him in a nice group home where he has his own, a bed and heating, and he's not in 2 feet of mud having his feet rot off. This is a completely different, and the one, we recognize the loss of autonomy, but we don't recognize the loss of autonomy in the other. And the other is far more widespread. If you look at throughout history, millions of young men were subject to this loss of autonomy that one woman was subject to and got millions and millions of dollars worth of compensation for. And their loss of autonomy was immeasurably worse. They got taken from their homes, they got taken from their livelihoods, they got taken from their futures, and they got dumped in a trench full of mud, being shot at and shelled, and subject to chemical gas attacks. All legally. The government could just do it legally. I think if we actually saw the violation of autonomy of young men in conscription in the same way as we see the violation of autonomy of a young woman who's being consigned to a group home because of allegations of immorality or whatever, man would have been assigned to prison. But regardless, if we can see that as a violation of autonomy, why can we not see conscription as a violation of autonomy? An incredible violation of autonomy. And considering how widespread it is, how could you possibly say that men in any culture that practices conscription are privileged relative to the group of people who never experience it? As far as I can tell, that means that Canada alone owes possibly millions of men who were subject to conscription billions of dollars in compensation that will never be paid because we just do not care. And that's another thing. We care when it happens to one woman who was put in a situation of comfort. Confined but comfortable. Not a jail, a group home. But it doesn't apply to men. All those young men who were dropped in mud and shelled. Doesn't apply to them, the loss of autonomy. No. You know why? Because of a privilege women have. We care about their situation. So don't give me this shit that men were traditionally privileged. They were not. I mean, bald-faced. No. And in fact, only the privileged can look at history and see their disprivilege. Because it's a privilege to regard your own comfort and personal autonomy as something that society is obligated to protect. That is a privilege. It's a privilege for women to look throughout history and see where they had that violated. You see how many men who look through history and see conscription for what it is? A violation of personal autonomy that is unmatched, except for slavery.
Feel that they are being oppressed by these people who are trying to just be treated as equal.
Why do you hate black people? African Americans.
They're dirty, they're stingy, and they're just gross.
Shit talking is equal opportunity. If it's a boy, he'll get called a virgin or a creep or any of a number of male-specific slurs. If it's a black boy, he'll be called any number of black and male-specific slurs. If it's any other identifiable minority who's a male, they will be called any number of slurs specific to that minority and slurs specific to being male. And if it's a woman or a girl, there'll be a toss-up between admittedly creepy, obsessive white knighting and slurs, depending on whether or not the person in question is interested in the contents of her pants or her ability to remain cool under the onslaught of, well, it's verbal abuse. But that's often what happens in these kinds of mano-a-mano competitions. Shit talking is a part of it. So which is it? Is the shit talking of a girl a respect of her as an equal, or is it disrespect because they're using girl-specific slurs? Even though if she was a boy, they would use boy-specific slurs. They do exist, by the way. You just ignore them.
Xbox Live and PlayStation Network both allow players to chat live while gaming. They have become havens for hate speech against women and minorities.
Selectively ignoring the slurs against boys and men. And in fact, this is a media-sponsored slur.
What I had noticed and witnessed was what I call like linguistic profiling, like just based on how somebody sounds, you know, they kind of lash out in like very like inappropriate ways.
Who votes for mission? They allow girls to play Call of Duty in America?
Wow, they allow morons to play Call of Duty in America?
Not everyone in the gaming community is sexist or racist. We are having this sort of internal cultural problem with sexist and racist gamers.
Saying that they hate the people who are vulnerable and our society wants to protect. That's a slur against them. It's so ironic because you're saying they are engaging in slurs against women as you engage in a slur against men, or the men of a particular group, which is actually pretty typical throughout history if you think about it. You know, the Nazi propaganda slur against Jewish men, segregationist propaganda slur against black men, and now you've identified another minority group of men, gamers, and you're engaging in slurs against them. I wonder how well this will age.
So, what happens when these behaviors move from the gaming world to the real world? Keegan Hanks studies the progression of the alt-right on the web.
Discord, as a platform, kind of had a meteoric rise in the alt-right.
So what? Discord expanded in popularity as a platform. More people from the right were on it. That doesn't mean anything about Discord. You could say the same about Twitter or Facebook or YouTube. It's a nonsense statement.
I think many of the members of the alt-right were actually aware of it because they were also members of the video game community. Many of them are. Discord became almost a requirement for a lot of these people if you wanted to be actively involved in the movement.
People questioned how I could draw the association between the individuals who do stuff like this, MSNBC and their slurring of gamers and men, and the segregationists and essentially Nazi propaganda. How can you make these connections? Because there's this hard, ugly core of people who just have to discriminate against someone, who just have to have a scapegoat. They just have to. They can't exist without one. They can't exist without a villain. They get spit all over. And it doesn't matter the specific group that they scapegoat or they vilify or they discriminate against. It doesn't really matter, just as long as they exist. Like, as long as there is one, they are happy. They are happy campers because they just need someone to hate. These are exactly the same people who would hate black people or Jewish people, or well, mostly black men and Jewish men, or gay men. It's exactly the same people because it was socially acceptable at that time to hate those groups, those minority groups of men. And now it's socially acceptable to hate another minority group of men. Gamers. Like I said, there just is always a group of people who just have to have a group to hate. Just they have to. Oh, it just feels so good. Just so good. Just so good to scapegoat, doesn't it?
Discord is anonymous and lightly monitored.
So now we know what they want from all this, what MSNBC wants. They want something that tracks you and is heavily moderated. So it can be heavily censored. Yay!
Which allowed the alt-right to control communications and access for thousands of users. Some Discord servers controlled by alt-right leaders made users post pictures of their Caucasian skin in order to participate. This allowed the alt-right to centralize its message and disseminate information around the Charlottesville rallies.
After finding out what CNN considered Nazis in Boston, the people who were in the gazebo in Boston, I did not look that closely at Charlottesville, but I do not believe anything that you guys are saying about it. For all I know, they were a bunch of hippies with tiki torches, handing out flowers to people and saying, make love, not war. Because I just do not trust you guys anymore. And I haven't investigated for myself, so I choose to just say, I don't know. Well, what happened at Charlottesville? Nobody knows.
Discord service played a substantial role in fomenting the riots that led to the death of Heather Heyer. After facing pressure, Discord shut down the servers used to organize in Charlottesville. The company stated, "We will continue to take action against white supremacy, Nazi ideology, and all forms of hate." Perhaps not surprisingly, James Alex Fields Jr., the white supremacist charged for Heyer's death, was no stranger to video games. In 2010, his mother filed a complaint against him, claiming he struck her in the head and locked her in the bathroom because she told him to stop playing video games.
She filed a complaint against him. Were charges dropped? Were they upheld? Was he convicted? Did this actually happen? I mean, I know we're... Oh, wait. I'm violating listen and believe. Of course. If a woman said it happened, it happened. It's not a situation that abusive women actually say to the authorities that the men they're abusing are the ones abusing them. That's not possible. No. We just say this, just poison the water, and now this guy represents all gamers. All gamers beat their moms in the head and lock them in bathrooms when they want to take away their games. All gamers are violent domestic abusers. I love the fucking sinister music. I mean, at that point in time, you hear the sinister music, you know that this is full of shit. I still don't know what the fuck the alt-right is. I talk about this shit and I don't even know. I can't even tell. It just seems to be some sort of just container for everything that MSNBC and CNN and all the media hate. which now seems to include Discord and the internet. You can't control it, you hate it. That's pretty typical of authoritarian demagogues. All right, that's the end of that. Okay, guys. So once again, we are going back to trial. If you don't know what this is about, we were evicted from, I was evicted, and by transitive property, all of Honey Badger Brigade was evicted from the Calgary Expo. We had a booth. We were selling my comics and some of Brian's comic work, as well as Honey Badger Brigade merchandise. And we had a Gamergate flag up on our booth to thank the Gamergate supporters who got us to the convention. And we were evicted from the 2015 Expo that it held in 2015. Redundant. And it has alleged multiple things against us. It alleged that we harassed people at a panel that we actually recorded, and there was no harassment by any sane person, any sane measure. And then it also alleged that we... Oh my god, there's so much freaking shit that they alleged. They... Sorry, this is fucking depressing. This entire thing has been a nightmare. They alleged that we infiltrated under an assumed name. We lied on a contract. They couldn't have possibly known who we were. They alleged a lot of things, all of which I believe are provably false. And the story has changed multiple times. But at the end of the day, we decided to fight back. Essentially what this is a corporation deciding what ideologies are acceptable in a marketplace, gatekeeping a marketplace and deciding who gets to be part of it. And in order to be part of it, you have to agree with them and their political leanings and political stances. We're going to trial November 28th, 29th, and 30th. And spaghetti noodle willing, there will be no more delays, and we will finally be able to get through this, get our witnesses on the stand, get them testifying, and have a final decision in this matter. Anyway, if you want to see justice done, if you want to make sure that they don't get away with smearing us and saying things that happened that didn't happen, then please go to www.feedthebadger.com, throw some shekels in the hat, and make sure that we can finish this fight. And make sure that corporations, government-backed corporations no less, can't decide to become gatekeepers based on their own political leanings. Gatekeepers for artists to have a career, to have access to a marketplace where they can sell their goods, that corporations can't gatekeep like that based on their ideological beliefs. Oh, the police report about this alone is just a thing of beauty and how hilarious it is. And we'll eventually be able to make that available as well. So go to www.feedthebadger.com and just $5, $50, $100. Let's get this thing done. And thank you to everyone who supported us so far. Thank you to everyone who supported us to this point and allowed us to get to this point, because I'll be giving more of an update later. But anyway, please help out. www.feedthebadger.com. Thank you.